everyone, and welcome to the Tulsa World Opinion video podcast. And I am here with Dr. Chris McNeil. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, and I am going to go over your positions. He wears many hats, and so it seems like a long resume. But Dr. McNeil is an emergency room physician resident at Oklahoma State University Tulsa Medical Center. But I first met you during your campaign for the school board seat for Union Public Schools, which you won. Congrats. But then I find out Dr. McNeil has his own company called the Youth Medical Mentorship. He's active in Black men in white coats. Did I get that correct?
Right.
And in both of those, recruit minority and underrepresented students into the medical fields. And he's a current fellow in the Aspen Institute for Healthy Communities. And on top of that, Dr. McNeil is a husband and a dad to 3 children, the cutest kids ever. And under age, 6 or 7?
Yeah, 6.
Yeah, it's got to be. So when do you sleep? Do you work that in? How do you?
You get really good at sleeping wherever is comfortable. So
you're sleeping in the ER rooms on breaks? Yes,
ma'am.
Well, Dr. McNeil has written an op-ed that I find one of the most eye-opening op-eds in a while. And so I hope that people listening to this will read. It'll be online Thursday and print Sunday. But what it's about is the brain drain of Black physicians out of Oklahoma. And these are people who typically grew up in the state, get their undergrad here, go to medical school, and then they leave. And in your op-ed, the thing that kind of struck me is starting July 1st, you're going to be the only Black ER doctor in Oklahoma, or the only, are you really going to be the only Black male doctor in Oklahoma in ERs starting then? I mean, it's
Black male resident. So it's kind of a unique niche, but it is something that you notice really quickly, just as being able to have mentors, and especially being a really tight-knit community. You look up really quickly and like, oh, wait a second, like my mentors are present, but they're not in the same stage as me, which is unique, being able to ask for advice and having that readily accessible.
Well, and you mentioned in there that there are 12 Black physicians in Tulsa coming out of training.
Correct.
And of those that are ready to be, full doctors, 9 are leaving to other states. And that is startling. I mean, we've, as Oklahoma, you would think, oh, they've trained here, they'll stay here, but that's not the case. So here's a heavy and complicated question. Why are our Black doctors leaving Oklahoma?
I think it's definitely multifaceted, but one of the things that's so powerful and important in this case is, do we know about it and what are we doing to circumvent it? And so you think of your favorite sports team and you think of any team that has a roster that you are adequately aware of, and when one person leaves or they're a free agent, when those dates come up. But when you have essentially a whole department of physicians leaving, it's not news. Nobody knows about it, and that's huge. I mean, think about the case of having a orthopedic surgeon that lives across the street from you, and you go to school every day. That's not the case for most people. But in this case in Tulsa, it is. It's small enough where you can have these intimate relationships, and being able to see that across the street and then it's gone. It's just really powerful.
You mentioned sports, and I didn't even talk about sports. You have an impressive resume as a wrestler. Now, I don't want to intimidate you here, but you're talking to the 1989 wrestling queen from Perry, Oklahoma. It's like the highest status of royalty in 1989 you could have gotten to. But I know that as a wrestler, you had a stellar high school. I mean, you had like 40 state championships or some crazy thing like that. Did you go to Oklahoma State University under, I think we can call him legendary Coach John Smith. Can we call him legendary now?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's hard. You're an Oklahoma State wrestler, but your academic performance as a student while at Oklahoma State, while wrestling for John Smith, is like crazy good. It's like, I was reading a story, did my background, 3.7 GPA. You had a fellowship to South Africa and Healthy Communities. The volunteerism out. I was struck by this line in your op-ed in talking about, because you make the contrast of your experience being recruited for athletics versus medical school, and this took my breath away. It was, I've been scouted for my body, but skipped for my brain. I was stunned by that. And so, but looking at that, I would think, why weren't medical schools tripping over themselves to have you in their program? But that wasn't the case. They didn't, there wasn't this big moment. And so it makes me think there are flaws at that part of it, like at the medical school level. I mean, aren't there things that ought to be reevaluated for how medical schools are recruiting students? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I can't reconcile that in my mind, why you weren't wanted by every single graduate program in America.
Absolutely. I mean, it's multifaceted. Again, it's not an easy answer, but what I think is really powerful in this sense is what we're using to figure out, can you pass tests? Can you be competent in the skills that are required for very rigorous training? Don't necessarily, and they're not always congruent with what you would say, these are the top 5 qualities I want in my doctor, my personal doctor. And you can see those qualities probably as early as 13, maybe even I can see them in my kids now. Being compassionate, being organized, having attention to detail. Like these things go manifest, but when you have a mentor and someone that tells you, hey, these things are really important, hone in on these skills, these are strengths of yours, and that person is giving you these words of affirmation, you follow that trail. Then when you have a job where you can do it every day, like, oh, wow, like I didn't realize I could get paid for this. I could change somebody's life for this. And a lot of times those things don't match up real well because that's not tested on the MCAT. That's not in there, it doesn't factor into your GPA. And so things that we could see are really going to be potential make you a phenomenal physician. They don't come into the risk factor, not part of your doctor combine to make sure that you can pass tests.
Okay, so we do, I think medical schools probably do need to be relooking at that, because I see what you're doing and I'm like, why? It just boggles my mind that that wasn't the experience you had. That I would think you would be recruited heavier for your academics than you were for your sports. That wasn't the case. But I want to talk, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about the youth medical mentorship. How did you get that started? What is the point of your goal, I should say, of your organization?
Absolutely. So it was born out of being a part of Black Men and White Coats. Black Men and White Coats being the goal. How can we increase the amount of Black physicians, especially when it comes to males, because we were lagging behind females and we're lagging just in general. Being able to have that as our North Star, one of the things that came up is, well, what does it take to increase the number by 1? And if we're increasing by 1, where are we currently at? And those aren't questions I could readily answer in Oklahoma. And no one else had the answer to them as well. So this is where the company was born from, being able to not only do the work of what does it take to move a child from, I have this idea, or I'm passionate and I want to work with people, or I have really good ability to have affinity to science. I want to get on the magic school bus, but the school bus doesn't exist, or I wasn't invited. And then all the way down the line to now I'm a physician in my own hometown and the impact that has. So we kind of have a big task on our hands to be able to do that, but that's what makes the work so phenomenal and so needed.
And so this is basically, is it trying to get more kids interested in the medical fields at younger ages, or what kind of things are you doing with the company to reach those goals that you're talking about? Try to bring that for kids who are already interested.
Yeah,
it's always easier, but how do you get kids who aren't interested at all to think I can do this?
Yeah, so you see kind of a unique timeline there. And I think that's one of the things that allows me to have a really unique role in this, is walk into a classroom and ask students, what do you want to be when you grow up? And for them, whether they say doctor or not, for me to have a response that essentially curtails what's the next best step. For them, it's a positive experience. And for a lot of kids that we're talking about that are going to be underrepresented in medicine, their experience with medicine may be their parent going into the back of an ambulance, or them having a tragic experience within medicine. And so it's not positive at all. And we think about it, at what point in time, it looks really good on a movie for a girl from tragedy to triumph, but it's not very practical in the terms of recruiting more doctors. And we're at this deficit. So to be able to provide these positive experience, let's get on a helicopter. Let's see what CPR actually stands for, do it on a mannequin, and now you have the skill to add to your repertoire. Let's be able to see what a chest tube is like instead of just dissecting a worm, and be able to say, these are skills that you have now. Now we can bring on the rest And what it's shown is that we're actually getting kids interested in science. We're getting them to now follow up with after school programs, and we're getting them to go to their classes and choose what classes are going to be predicated on their future.
I'm just curious, how did you get involved in medicine? Because your dad was because you're in Lawton, he's a military guy.
Yes.
So did you have people in your life who were in medicine that brought you into the field, or is this something you found on your own that you just liked?
Absolutely. So my father was a physician's assistant, and I think one of the kind of unique crux of Black men in white coats is a lot of people wear white coats, so you can't really tell a dietitian from a PA, from a nurse practitioner, from an MD, from an orthopedic surgeon. Like, you can't tell until you ask them. And for the longest time, I didn't realize that my dad played that role as a PA until someone else actually called him doc, and it was going to work with your father. So being able to see that, it became something that once it came out of my mouth, just like in wrestling, it's like, I'm going to win state this year. Now we're going to hold you to that. And I had people in my life, whether it be coaches, teachers, etc., that almost kind of lit up like a Christmas tree. This is the way, this is the pathway that you're going to take, and we're going to hold you to that. And I think now, like, we've created a whole system out of that same process. It's came out of your mouth, word is bond. We're going to make sure that you have the propensity to stay on that pathway.
So did you know that when you were in high school, or did you come to that? Did you start leaning toward that in college? When did you know?
Excellent question. Yeah, I said it in middle school, probably maybe as early as elementary school, and I didn't start actually believing it until probably the end of high school, when I started applying to some Ivy League schools and realized, like, I was getting in. I had no intention of going. I had no intention that I had the capability to do that, and I got in, and I'm like, okay, this is real. And then, of course, John Smith shows up at your door, and he's like, you're going to be a cowboy now. So it's like, okay, well.
That's all it took. Just
the game has changed. Yeah, the game has changed.
Easiest recruiting ever.
Yeah. So I think that's powerful. Words matter, stories matter. Being able to have these scripts that we can fall back on, and thinking about there's a part of your life that you're set up for to do really well, to live a purpose-driven life. And for me, medicine was something that I had to fight for, but it was well worth the journey, and being able to see now the impact that I can have, even more so just at the bedside.
Did you ever get discouraged? Were there points that you didn't get in right away? Or, did you ever just think, okay, I've said it since middle school, moment change. What, did you ever get discouraged? And if so, how do you get over that?
Yeah, every day. Every day is kind of
you have a lot on your plate every day. Yes.
Yeah. It's a humbling experience, and I would say in that moment, that's where the village is so powerful. It's important because people will hold you to what you say, and the moment that you think that you're going to quit or that it's not going to work out, that's when you have a system that's built around you that pushes you back. Almost kind of, we see the barricades on whether it be the UFC or a boxing ring. Your back goes against those ropes. It pushes you back. And in our community, that's what we have to have. And so we can see who has those ropes and who hasn't. When you fall, you got to be able to fail forward. And not every individual has that. And that's what I hope my company can provide for students, is the ability to have some resiliency.
One of the things you spoke about when you were running for school board, and that you bring up a bit in the op-ed, is the idea that in order to have this workforce in medical fields, or really in any STEM, this is my concern, is that we are under-resourcing our Oklahoma schools to where kids need that higher math and science, and we've got to get kids in the AP classes. And that was one of the things you bring up, is you want the advanced placement in those advanced classes to look like our communities.
Yeah.
That, you can have a school that mirrors the same demographics as your community, but if those kids aren't there, what right now, like if you were to walk into a union in advanced classes, what do those classes look like now? Are they mirror of the community, or do we still have a long way to go to get kids who typically, Black kids into those advanced classes and Hispanic kids into those classes? What does it look like now?
Yeah. I would say that there's a lot of work to do, but we're on the mend. and being able to have, we just had the National Teacher of the Year, Rebecca Peterson, and to be able
Yes,
to
that's a big win for you guys.
yeah. So being able to see, a 13-year-old and say, like, what are the odds that you're going to be in Rebecca Peterson's class? What are the odds that you're going to take calculus? Calculus isn't something that you just waltz into. It's something that you have to be prepared for, starting by what you're taking in 7th and 8th grade. And so to be able to start to have those conversations with administration and parents is a powerful experience, because now we can actually see, okay, we have 1 or 2 Black males in organic chemistry. It's awesome that organic chemistry is even offered in high school. But then to think that those kids taking that class their junior, senior year, and how they'll be able to circumvent university level studies because they've had that positive experience and those phenomenal mentors at an early age in a small class size setting, they're going to do fine. We're going to have that resilience that they need. And now we can actually see that, we can measure that. It's like, if you didn't have those experiences, that's where kids change their major. That's where we lose our doctor workforce, and it's dollars and cents. So even though it comes off as like, hey, we're looking at these individuals, and this is very politicized right now in terms of the color of your skin or where you're from or any of those things, but we're talking about dollars and cents and saving lives. This is extremely important, and everybody has a different race to run. We got to make sure that they have the ability to prioritize their lane and being able to be exceptional in what they do. And that's it for every Oklahoma.
And this is a question kind of tapping into your union school board experience there, but Oklahoma right now, we're having trouble finding qualified teachers. I mean, to find teachers who teach those advanced calculus, I mean, AP physics teachers right now, yeah, my kids couldn't even find one. I mean, it was, they couldn't find the advanced classes that they need. And so you start patching it with TCC concurrent and all these other things. But as a school board member, I know that you see those recruitment challenges. Just what are some of your thoughts on what has to change? What do we as a state have to change to get the teachers we need for this workforce, for the medical workforce, for STEM workforce? It just, it all seems to be pushed down more. So
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
The obvious elephant in the room is always funding. And one of the things that I think is super, super unique in this aspect is a physician put in any community, because of research that we've done, is going to have a net value of $1.9 million. And they're going to support over 11.7 different jobs. Some of those jobs can also be educators, and being able to have a physician workforce in a community and people that are now going to miss less work, and being able to prioritize more money that can go to the school. If the businesses are more successful, again, that's more money that can be invested back into the school. When we have the system overall working well and being efficient, there's ways to be more flexible, but we got to have everybody on the same page. We got to be talking about the same North Star. In that same sense, what I think is super critical in my work is an educator is found early on, elementary school, a kid that is like, man, I love this. Like, I want to learn more about this. Like, I could see myself as a teacher. Being able to get a hold of that student and be like, okay, like, we're going to make a whole after school program around you. Then we're going to talk about curriculum design. We're going to talk about how you manage a classroom, and being able to build those skills out and have that youthful workforce that is now being and becoming our next educators, and to know that they're homegrown, but at the same time knowing that we need to make sure your college is paid for. Like, you've been adamant about this. We have this pipeline. We know that you're ready for it and you're built for it. Let's make sure that you got the resources that you need. And we can see that now. And it's beautiful, but at the same time, it's got to be systematic.
That's a whole other podcast is college cost. And that would take us to a whole other hour. But one of the questions I'll get, the argument that I'm going to hear, and you've probably heard it too, and it goes back to what we're talking about with the medical schools and how I'm like, why, you are the perfect student for this. People are going to say, well, what does it matter what race or ethnicity means? We just want the smartest people to be doctors. So why does race matter? So I'm going to turn that over to you. Why does race matter?
This is phenomenal, because what I think is crazy, if we, once again, going back to our NFL analogy, you don't recruit a nose guard to play tight end. You have to have a specialized workforce that can do specialized operations in the field. And so to think about our Black population, it being very stigmatized when it comes to medicine, even in my own home, there's been components of, well, this is the way it's always been, instead of, man, we talk about evidence. We literally have the book in our library, in our bookshelf, but it's so easy to fall back into some of those caveats that we've had passed down tradition, generation after generation. To break that cycle, we need individuals that are coming from some of our most afflicted population, getting the education that they need, getting empowered through the education systems that we have, and then going back into those communities. And for the longest time, we've had a lot of our Black population that has not traversed the medical plane in Oklahoma. And so we can see that. And we can see that as we start counting individuals in different specialties and what that representation looks like. And to think that in a place like North Tulsa, where we've done all these things to improve life expectancy beyond 12 years, and that gap that exists, one of the things that we could really change is, well, how many Black males have we had graduate from that area and go back to now improve lives in that area? And a perfect example of that is Dr. Jabron Pasha, big bro for me, and the impact that he's
on
having.
our community advisory board. I'm a fan too. Yes.
Yeah. So it's like those are the things. Now measure his success, and which is hard to do because there's no scale for that. But to think that if we can multiply him by 2, being from that area and the impact that it would have, that's what we're looking at. And now we can actually see that this actually, for every 10% that we increase a Black physician, even if the patients in that population don't see the physician or not, life expectancy increases by 1 month. That's huge. That's, I mean, and we're talking about generational poverty. That 1 month may be giving you Social Security, so that way you could be able to give something back to generations that are coming after you. It's a big deal.
You know, when I hear that question, I always think about, as a woman, I like female doctors, no offense. But when I look for an OBGYN, I'm like, I want to go to where it says, you know, I want to go to a woman. And so to me, I don't think it's necessarily out of, you know, it's not strange to think I want to go to someone who understands me better, who understands what I'm going through. And so when I hear that question, that's what I always kind of go back to, which is, we need a lot more Black women who are doctors, frankly. I mean, that's, you know, to me, it's like, I think that question is just outdated. And of course it matters. We want to go to people who we feel like understand us more. And, you know, that's just the way it is. But, you know, one of the things that, so we know the problem.
Yeah.
And this is the other big complicated question, is how do we start to fix it? To me, I think maybe just with your op-ed, just pointing out the problem is one thing, but what are some things that you think that could be done now that could start on that road to start bringing in more people who, more Black students and Hispanic students into the medical field? I mean, where do we start?
Yeah, I think the first most important thing is like to understand the history of where we're at. The only way we can know where we're going is to know where we're at and where we're from. And so we just mourn, I guess in this case, we had our memorial for the St. Francis. And I think it's important to jump back almost 102 years ago. Dr. A.C. Jackson, he was killed on the same day, June 1st, 1921. 101 years later, in 2022, we have Dr. Preston Phillips. And what that equates to, which is important when we look at it, just surgery, we have only one active orthopedic surgeon that's Black in the state of Oklahoma. This is the individual I met when I was 17 years old. He sewed up my chin, which you can't see now, but on the sideline. And it was very, very powerful, because this is one of the first individuals that I shadowed. He's a mentor to this day. He told me what was going to be on my interview for my medical school. And he did that, you know, forever ago, and nailed it to a T. So being able to have those individuals are going to be crucial to students, not only be able to find shadowing opportunities, to be able to get plugged into, why do I want to do this, you know, in my life? I got to be able to see you, and to be able to ask questions like I did for him. But all that kind of comes into fruition when we think about, I met him when I was 17. I'm 34 now, and it hasn't changed. More Black males applied to medical school in 1978 than in 2014. And so, like, we have to be,
that should not be that way.
Yeah. And so we OSU just celebrated graduation, and we had our first Black male to match orthopedic surgery And to think that he wants to stay here in Oklahoma, but he got matched to Chicago. And it's like, man, we should be doing everything in our power to keep somebody like this here in town. Not just him, but across the board. And whether they want to go somewhere or not, what are we doing to sweeten the pot to make sure that, like, hey, you know, this is an individual that we want in boardrooms, that we want navigating the planes of neighborhoods and communities, because that's what the research shows, is that we're going to get involved in this sense of the community that really extends the arms of the medical system and allows patients to say, look, I'm all in. I'll come to these primary care appointments. I want to know more about my health. You're my neighbor and you're also my doctor. And that's what we need moving forward.
Well, as always, thank you. I know that your time is precious, because I don't know how you find all the time to do what you do. And everyone should read his op-ed this weekend. It really is eye-opening. People need to be in contact with their lawmakers and policymakers, figure out how we can bolster our medical schools and really just education in general, because this starts so young, getting kids in middle school and having them prepared. But also, as always, the guests get the last word on the podcast. So what are some parting thoughts? What are some things that you just want to leave people with today?
Absolutely. We have our Youth Medical Mentorship Summit on July 28th. It's a chance for your student to sit in the seat of a medical school to see that this is what they want to do in life, whether they do or whether they do not, to be able to have the opportunity to meet mentors, have lunch, see the medical school, and be able to spend the day in the life of a doctor. We would love your child to be able to come out and celebrate that time with us and get them pumped up for this summer. And it'll be July 28th. You can see us on Facebook as well as Instagram, as well as OSU's Instagram, so that we're promoting this. So I would love for you guys to come out and have your kids 8th grade through senior year in high school to come and see what it's like to be a physician.
So is there a website or anything like that, or just go to the OSU Instagram account? Absolutely.
Our website is youthmedicalmentorship.org. And so that'll also have all the information that you need. And once again, just excited to provide those positive experiences, because we need that workforce. Okay. Well, everyone check out youthmedicalmentorship.org. And thank you very much. Keep in touch, and we'll have you back sometime to talk about different issues on these many different jobs that you do. So thank you. Thank you so much.